So what would make me want to discuss the Pathless? After all, the game hasn't been released yet, and there's only 2 trailers for the game available at the time of writing this script. Not only does this mean there's limited amount of footage that can be used, but there's so many unknowns about the game. Well, it still ended up being the most thought-inducing game showcased at the PlayStation 5 reveal event by the virtue of this sentence.
She can shoot talismans to fill her dash meter, which allows her to bound across the landscape.
It made me think about not only the upcoming generation of consoles and games, but also about the past ones and what made them stand out. Looking back, it's pretty clear to see that each console generation has been bringing something new to the table that has in some part defined the generation in a similar way to how we often think about decades that have passed. These days, whenever someone mentions the 70s, the hippie movement pops into one's head pretty quickly, much like how the Nintendo 64 generation makes people think of the rise of 3D. For this upcoming generation, it's been drilled into our heads what the next technological leap will be.
Ray tracing, SSD, dream of an SSD.
But oftentimes, each generation also has a typical genre of games that reach a high level of popularity. Looking at the Xbox 360 generation, we saw the rise of third-person over-the-shoulder shooters, and I strongly believe that when we're going to be looking back at the PS4 generation, we'll see that open-world games have had a great showing. Whether it's something completely new to video games like a 3D camera or a shift in design within a genre, it always comes with its own set of unique challenges. These challenges can be too difficult to figure out within a single generation. For all the credit that was given to Super Mario 64's camera when it came out, it's clear that we're still seeing improvements to how we navigate a camera in 3D space today. In a similar fashion, the generation we're on the verge of leaving behind us has been amazing in the leaps that have been made in open world design. Throughout this generation, we've seen worlds grow larger, while at the same time their believability and level of detail has been expanded upon in more ways than one. We've seen some very impressive improvements in graphical fidelity, which can do a lot to ground a player character in the world, but gameplay systems are not falling behind, as the rise of systemic design has gotten to the point where it's moving into becoming a standard. These things are of course added on top of all the big moments within the games, to make the worlds as polished as they can be between the big moments. But even so, there's one part of open world games that has been given the middle child treatment and has been overlooked for a while. That part being getting from one place in the world to another. Most games have a couple of different ways that you can utilize to make it across its world. The regular walking, some type of vehicle, and of course the fast travel. They do their job, but that's about as far as they go. Some games have even gone as far as automizing much of the process, as the devs realize that forcing the player to sit there and do a task that can be handled by the AI isn't necessarily peak gameplay. But Breath of the Wild went a bit further and showed that there can be interesting yet simple gameplay tied to Traversal. As far as I'm concerned, there's 2 core elements that manage to make the climbing engaging. First of which being the stamina bar. I won't waste your time explaining how it works. If you've played any game that contains the stamina bar, it's basically the same. The other element would be the risk-reward aspect of climbing. Whenever you run out of stamina, you don't just get to enjoy the progress you've made as your character is panting. You fall down with the possibility of ending up where you started, or if you're having a particularly bad fall, you can be worse off. Making progress up the wall is also tied to the stamina. You either climb slowly and slowly lose stamina, or make leaps up the wall that take out a chunk of your stamina. Obviously, you're incentivized to make leaps because it's quicker, but then you're also feeding into the risk-reward loop. Because you're always losing stamina while on a wall, you never get to feel completely safe, and therefore you get those small victory moments where you use your last bit of juice to get up that ledge. When this gets compared to walking and running, there's a clear difference in how it affects the player. In both instances, we're managing stamina, but the failure state for running is a delayed recovery for your stamina, as well as your character walking extra slow for a short while to recover. Although this can be annoying and will of course make you want to stay away from the state, it's not close to the amount of punishment you receive for messing up a climbing section. Running will never be subtractive in the way that climbing is, and as a result you don't get from one safe space to another, but rather from one space to another, which takes away the exciting moments of just making it. All of this ends up showing how a basic setup of risk and reward can turn what seems like a menial task into an engaging experience, which ends up giving some meaning to the saying, the journey is more important than the destination. There are many things about the Pathless that stand out, but the main thing that caught my interest was the fact that the game switches up some of the open world conventions that we've gotten used to over the years. The first notable thing that the Pathless gets rid of is the map. Although maps are far from being an exclusively open world feature, it has been integral to the way we learn about the worlds we're playing in. Without it, the importance of memorable landmarks rises immensely, as without proper points of reference, it would be next to impossible to navigate the world. And of course, without any map, the traditional way of finding a fast travel point on said map and warping to it goes out the window as well. This decision has led to what seems to be one of the most defining features of the Pathless, the archery and dash meter. Not only does this allow for fast movement, but it also requires more of the player than simple walking. Would it not have been for this feature, the game would seem to me like it catered to players that are quite different than me. Those players being the ones that enjoy the slow burn experience type games. But with the movement there, I instantly thought about how Breath of the Wild gamified something as simple as climbing a wall. It's no secret that the Pathless seems to take quite a bit of inspiration from Breath of the Wild. If this translates to creating risk-reward mechanics like Nintendo did with Zelda is left to be seen. But whether it succeeds or not, it managed to spark my interest, and it made me hopeful that open world games have come far enough to make looking at something as fundamental as movement with fresh eyes and increased knowledge a worthwhile endeavor. This does not mean that I think every open world game that gets released should have more intricate movement, as I do believe there's value to a traversal system that doesn't challenge the player. But expanding on a genre will make it more open for different types of players. It could even help bring in new players, as they may find new ways to have fun in open worlds by the virtue of finding fun in something as basic as its movement. I don't think that this will be a defining feature for the generation in the same way that things like 3D and online has been before. But it would be a shame for open world games to not experiment more in an area that I feel can really make the experiences more enjoyable for people who already like the genre and players who historically have chosen to stay away from them. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider subscribing to the channel or liking the video, and let me know in the comments what you would like to see with the next generation of consoles. Are you more excited about ray tracing or SSDs, or maybe something else has caught your eye? This video is a bit shorter than usual, partly due to the fact that I haven't been playing anything lately that's caught my eye. I feel like I'm in a bit of a slump when it comes to games I want to play, but also because I wanted to make a smaller project where I focused more heavily on the editing aspect of it. I hope that it shows that I have been doing some tutorials and really starting to think differently in how I set up my videos. Whether you're a long-time viewer or this is the first video of mine you're watching, I'd be interested in hearing what you thought of it from the perspective of my old work or when compared to other creators. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.